Hello and welcome, a very warm welcome to the Green Bean. My name is Katie and my faithful companion Jack is here, but he's refusing to sit with me for recording right now because it's hot here in the UK today. So he's keeping cool over in a corner by himself, but rest assured he will definitely be a part of this episode, as he always is. These videos are where I like to share my creative process, and in this episode I've got a couple of different drawing projects to share with you, some crochet and some knitting, and a sewing project, as well as a beautiful walkout in the Bannau Brycheiniog National Park, which is where I live. But before we dive in, I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who supports my videos on Patreon. I could not do this without you. Huge thanks for your financial support. And if you're interested, Patreon is where I share extra videos. In the most recent ones, I was sharing a sewing project that went slightly awry, and the process of designing a logo for my upcoming hiking videos, which I'm planning to do with my friend Katrina Chapman. Patrons get early access to the regular videos as well, and ad-free access and discounts in my shop. If that sounds interesting to you, please feel free to head on over there and join us if you're able to. Also, I want to say thank you to everyone who leaves a donation on Ko-fi and who shops in my shop and who helps to spread the word about my videos. All of it helps keep me able to do my creative work and share it with you here in these videos. So thank you so much. Without further ado, let's head out for a walk with Jack and get into the episode. There are two things I want to share in my drawing section of the episode today. The first is a commission that I have been working on secretly for the past few months. Sometimes when I'm working on secret commissions, I record them and I get to share the video footage with you later. This time I was on a bit of a tight deadline. I was feeling a little stressed out, so I didn't record any of the process, but I hope it's still going to be exciting for you to see the results. So I have some illustrations in the John Arbon Textiles annual issue 3, which is, if it's not out already by the time this video comes out, it's certainly available to pre-order already. It's a booklet that they put together every year or so, and I've had the privilege of being asked to illustrate every issue so far. So I have illustrations in issue 1 and issue 2, and this is issue 3, and I got to do so much for this one and it was a lot of fun. My favourite piece is this one. It's actually a 2-page comic showing sheep working on the machinery in the mill. So John Arbon Textiles have a traditional worsted spinning mill in Devon, where I used to live. I visited many times, so it was a lot of fun to reinterpret the mill and the mill folk in terms of sheep. And the sheep are all breeds that John Arbon Textiles use in their yarns and fibres, so I had a lot of fun working on that. I also did some puzzles for this issue, so I didn't create the puzzles this time, I just illustrated them. So there's 3 different word puzzles which I really enjoyed working on. It's a lot of fun. I'm so excited to see. It's always nice to see your illustrations in a real publication. It's a lovely moment. I don't think I ever get tired of receiving a book in the post that has my drawings in it. So it's been really fun to work on this project, and there are some gorgeous patterns in the annual as well. Actually, I also illustrated all of the schematic diagrams for the patterns as well, so I got a bit of a sneak peek at what the designs were. I also helped out on the photo shoot. Back in May I went down to Exmoor and I was helping out with styling and managing the logistics of doing the photo shoot. So I've been really involved with this project. I feel very happy with all of my contributions to it, and I'm really excited that it's finally coming out into the world and I get to tell you about it. Now that my commissioned work is finished though, it means that I get to return to thinking about my own projects and things that I want to add to my shop for this season. And I haven't had as much time to work on illustrations this year as I would have liked. I think the stress of moving house finally caught up with me, and I just haven't been able to do as much work as I would have liked to. So I've been thinking about small things that I can do, achievable things that I can add to my shop for the autumn on a short-term basis. So there won't be any grand exciting product launch like there was for my fairy ring socks and hat and all of my different stickers and washi tapes last year, but I think it might be time for me to add a new enamel pin to my shop, or maybe 2. We'll see how it goes. The first thing I did was revisit my sketchbooks. So I keep sketchbooks, all of my sketches for reference, and I haven't looked at them for a couple of months while I've been working on these commissions, so it was nice to revisit them, and then I pick out ideas that think they might be feasible. And I remembered this painting that I did earlier in the year. Do you remember this one of the dapper frog in dungarees foraging for mushrooms? The painting itself never worked out. I did a couple of different versions of it. I wasn't completely happy with either of them. So it never went anywhere, and that is just how it goes sometimes. But I found this little sketch in my sketchbook and I thought, do you know what, maybe this wants to be an enamel pin instead of instead of a painting. So I've decided that this little sketch is going to become a new pin for my shop. So all that needs to happen for that to be a thing that happens is I need to add some colours to it. So I'll scan it into my computer, add some colours in Photoshop, which is a very quick job, and then I will send the pin off to my manufacturers in Birmingham and ask them to make it into a pin for me. So that is an exciting, easy thing I could do. It's always nice when you discover work that you've already done, that you can finish a project that quickly and easily. But I thought I would also like to add a sheep pin to my shop, and I thought in this episode I would go through the process of developing that design with you, because it's not as simple as just sitting down and doing a quick line drawing, colouring it in and sending it off. There's a lot of process leading up to being able to do what looks like a simple line drawing and send it off to production. So I thought I'd walk you through that process and my thoughts while I do it, so that you can see what exactly goes into developing a new design like this. So I've got a page full of pencil sketches, and I would normally just leave them as pencil sketches and only add ink to the one or two designs that I'm very seriously considering. But it's not very easy for you to see my pencil sketches in the video, so I thought I would ink each one in so that you can see them more clearly and I can talk through my thought process as I do it. So my brief to myself for this project was to develop a sheep pin that was not craft specific, so I wanted it to not specifically depict knitting or crochet or spinning, but be something that could appeal to anyone who does any of those yarn related crafts. So I'm playing with different visual ideas that combine a sheep and a ball of yarn. So this first one has a sheep leaping over a ball of yarn. It's quite cute. I don't know if it's necessarily the one I'll go for, because as you can see already on the rest of the page, I've got at least 10 more ideas to consider. I'm going to speed the drawing up now a little bit so that I can talk you through all of the designs at a little bit faster than real time. I want to show you myself working through all of them. The next idea I had, moving on from the sheep leaping over the ball of yarn, was this sheep standing on a ball of yarn. I think I prefer the composition of this one. It's a little bit more unusual, but I don't know if it's necessarily the one I'm going to go for. The next sketch is a sheep whose body is an actual giant ball of yarn, and this is the only one amongst all the ideas that I actively dislike. And you might ask why I bothered to even draw it, but there's something about this process of drawing and working through lots of different ideas that helps new and better ideas come forward, and I find it's necessary to draw out even the ideas that I know are terrible before I put them on paper, just to help my thinking move forward. So even though I don't like this idea, I know it's definitely not the one. I think a sheep whose body is a big ball of yarn is a little bit of a cliche. It was necessary to put it on paper just to keep the process flowing. After that, I drew this tiny little sheep. I don't quite know why I drew it so small, which is hanging out in the middle of a bunch of yarn balls. And my thinking with this one was it would look cute if these 5 yarn balls were in different colours. They kind of make me think of petals of a flower, so I thought it'd be nice if they were kind of bright rainbow coloured petals, so it looks like a colourful sheep in a flower. From there, I thought, well, what if I go with the same concept visually, a sheep in the middle of a selection of balls of yarn, but this sheep is not standing up, but lying down or rolling around as though lying in their massive stash of yarn. The next idea I thought of was, well, what if this sheep isn't just hanging out with some balls of yarn, but actually wearing some knitwear? And the first idea I went to was thinking about the rubber stamp design that I already have, which is a sheep wearing a jumper. It's been one of my most popular rubber stamp designs ever since I launched my collection 4 years ago. So it's possible I could just turn that design into an enamel pin exactly the same as it is. It's worth thinking about that, I thought, but then I thought, what if I develop that idea a little bit further? But I didn't have any more ideas for that straight away, so I carried on drawing more sheep with balls of yarn. This one is carrying a bunch of balls of yarn on its back. I quite like this composition actually. I think it's cute and unusual, and I think it moves a bit further away from that cliche of the sheep's body actually being a ball of yarn. I quite like this one. I think it's fun, and I think if the balls of yarn were different bright colours, it could be a really nice design. I added this round bit at the bottom of this one because when you're doing an enamel pin you need to be a bit careful to make sure you don't have any sticky out bits or sharp edges. The next design I tried sort of broke my own rules for the brief. I said that I wanted it to appeal to all different crafters, and then I thought I just have to try drawing a sheep actually knitting. I gave this one some horns to make it a little bit different from the other ones I've been drawing, and just did the torso with a little bit of knitting with straight needles. I don't think this is the one I'm going to go for, cute as it is, simply because I don't want this design to be knitting exclusive, so this doesn't actually work for what I was trying to do. Then I went back to the idea of sheep in knitwear, and I sketched out this design of a head of a sheep wearing a scarf, and I really like this one. I think this is probably my favourite of the sketches so far. I think the composition is nice, the movement of the scarf and how it sticks slightly outside the edge of the circle of the badge. I think this is definitely going on the shortlist, this one. I think it's really nice, but the thing it doesn't have is any balls of yarn in it. That may be a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not sure, but certainly this is my favourite concept so far. Then I think now I've almost entirely exhausted the list of ideas of sheep with balls of yarn, but I had one more to sketch out, and this was a sheep juggling some balls of yarn. I'm not quite sure I've got the body shape right here, it's a little bit strange, but I think it's a cute idea. I don't know if it's necessarily the one. I feel like I've given myself a lifetime supply of ideas for potential sheep enamel pins here, but it's good. It's just good to go through this whole process and try lots of different things out rather than trying to come up with a finished design in your head and translate it onto paper. I just find it helpful to sketch through lots of different ideas, even if they're rubbish. Even if they're rubbish before you know your pen hits the paper, it's useful to just see them. So the next one I've got is, well, I was going through my thoughts about putting a sheep in some knitwear, and I decided to put this sheep in all the knitwear. This sheep is super cozy. They're wearing a hat and a scarf and a jumper, and they're carrying a ball of yarn and drinking a cup of tea. So they're having a really cozy winter afternoon. I showed this design to a couple of friends, and although the circle I drew around it was only intended to be part of the pin design to make it not have so many sharp edges, both of the friends I showed it to saw it as a sheep sitting on a sofa or an armchair, which I thought was actually even better. So again, this is one that I quite like, and it's probably going to make it onto the shortlist. Then I had to try out a sheep with a pair of mittens. Obviously it's not super practical for sheep to wear mittens, so figuring out a composition where I could show the sheep as though it had hands was a little bit interesting. I think this one is cute, but I don't think it's a winner really. It's got its mittens on a string. I don't know if you ever had that when you were a kid or an adult. I'm certainly someone who has a tendency to lose mittens and gloves, so having them on a string through the sleeves of my coat is a useful thing for me to do. I think it's cute, but I don't think I'm going to go with this one. Then I went back to the very first idea of a sheep leaping over some yarn, just because I wanted to try it out with the sheep leaping over several balls of yarn, or a rainbow of yarn, rather than just a single ball, because I started to think about, well, what happens when I colour these designs in? What colour am I going to make the yarn? Obviously green, but I do have to consider other colours, whereas if I go for several different balls of yarn, then I can get a few different colours in there. Again, I don't love this design, but I think it's got potential. It could be developed into something, but it's not going on my shortlist for now. Then I returned to the idea of a sheep on top of a ball of yarn, and I was trying with this one to combine the idea of the earlier design I did of the sheep standing on a ball of yarn with the sheep who was sitting in the armchair. This sheep is knitting, which again means that it actually doesn't fulfill my brief, but I do think it's kind of cute that it's got this chunky sheep sitting having a knit on top of a giant ball of yarn. And this is where you get to see how the whole process of sketching through all these ideas helps and starts to come together, because I think this is the point where I started to see a final design come together. So this is a sheep who is wearing a jumper, so it has that concept of my old rubber stamp design. It's standing on a ball of wool, which is something I tried out earlier in these sketches, and I wouldn't have arrived at this idea, this exact composition, without sketching through all of these different ideas first. So I hope it's really showed you how the process of evolving an idea works for me. And it's always really satisfying. Sometimes I get stuck into thinking, oh goodness, I have to have this idea fully formed before I put pen to paper, but it's good to be reminded through the process of drawing is always how I arrive at my best ideas. So this isn't the final drawing I will use to develop into a pin. I will probably have another few goes at it to make it just right, make sure all the details are exactly as I want them to be, but I do think this is probably the concept I'm going to go with. It's really nice on the hottest day of the year so far to not only have a woolly project on your lap, but a hot dog licking you while you try to work on it. But I am going to try and talk to you about my woolly craft projects as best I can. Can you stop licking my arm for a second? Thank you. I have, let me just put a stitch marker in so I don't lose my place, a little bit of progress on my Escrick shawl to share with you. I've done a few rows. Thank you, Jack. I've done a few rows since we last chatted, and you can now get a sense of the scale of this shawl. I think when I last showed it to you I was just working the first row, but now you can really see how big and dramatic this shawl is going to be. And I have been really enjoying working on it. I haven't made a lot of progress because I'm still feeling not that excited about working with yarn, and I have to say that the current very hot temperatures here in the UK are definitely contributing to that. It is really warm today, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to enjoy the feeling of yarn moving through my fingers. I don't have a lot more to say about this project. If you didn't see the last few episodes, this is the Escrick shawl, a crochet design from the Daughter of a Shepherd book, Beginnings, and I'm using the recommended yarn, which is Daughter of a Shepherd's Heritage DK, which I believe is a blend of, well, it's definitely a blend of Hebridean and Swartlaws, two naturally black or dark brown sheep. I'm not sure of the percentage. I think it's something like 85% Hebridean, 15% Swartlaws. But it is this beautiful natural dark brown colour, which I really love. This is my, I've lost count, at least my third attempt at this project. I finished the whole central body triangle of my second attempt and then frogged it in my last episode because my gauge was just way too tight. I've since restarted the project and I'm feeling much happier with how my gauge is feeling. I'm using a 6.5mm hook. I've got a lovely loose gauge and I'm really pleased with how the fabric is looking this time. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who left kind and supportive comments on my last video. I had been talking about losing my interest in knitting and how much that had taken me by surprise because knitting has been so central in my life for so many years now. It's very unfamiliar to find myself disinterested in a craft that I really love, and I got so many brilliant suggestions, all kinds of things, from just trying to relax and not worry about it and enjoy my other creative pursuits to turning over my stash and finding something that really sparks my excitement, to picking up an old project that's close to the end and finishing it so I can re-experience the joy of finishing a project. But the idea that I have fixed on to try out is, well, several different aspects to it, but the main aspect to it is to knit with my handspun. I've never actually knitted with any of my handspun. I've hoarded it as precious finished objects and not been brave enough to cast it on. But I think it might be time, and the reason that I've chosen that is so that I can really focus in on what it is I love about knitting. I think I got to a place where I was feeling stressed and pressured about the items that I wanted at the end of the process of knitting, and I had forgotten to enjoy the process, which is everything from handling the yarn to winding it, to experiencing it move through my fingers, to appreciating where it came from and who made it, and all of those aspects are things about knitting that I love and reasons why I learned to knit in the first place. I wanted to make my own clothes, and you know, not only clothes that fit me and are unique to me, but clothes that honour the animals that the fibre came from. So a lot of my yarns that I choose are from small companies that I know, and I know how the sheep are looked after. All of those aspects are really important to me in terms of why I knit, and it's about slowing down and appreciating the process again, rather than just focusing on, oh my goodness, I want that jumper or I want that shawl. It veers into the kind of goal focused, I guess, capitalist drive to have more things, which is kind of the opposite of why I knit. So instead of trying to pursue another finished project or finish some of the projects I've got, I'm going to actively slow myself down, and the slowest thing I can think of is to work with some yarn that I made myself that took me over a year to make, and cast on with it. And I started this process of teaching myself to love knitting again with winding the skein. So I really took the time to savour the process of passing this fibre through my fingers yet again. It's already been, every inch of this fibre has already passed through my hands twice, once for spinning it, once for plying it, and now a third time as I've wound it into a ball ready to knit, and then to become a garment it will inch by inch pass through my fingers all over again. And I love that. I absolutely love that, and you can probably see already that it's sparking some of my excitement and joy again. Another thing that I'm going to do to intentionally slow myself down is use my wooden knitting needles, which I haven't used for a long time. I tend to prefer metal needles these days because I like a sharper point. I tend to use high sharps or Chiaogu minis from smaller size needles, but my first love was always wooden needles because I love how they feel in my hands, and that extra little bit of friction I think will just help encourage me to slow down. I thought I would cast on my swatch while chatting to you, so that you get to see my excitement about casting on with my handspun for the very first time, and yeah, I get to talk about savouring the process and hopefully finding some joy in my knitting again. Even if it's only a swatch, it doesn't matter. At least I will have knitted something with my handspun. Whether or not I decide to then cast on a garment or project, I don't think that really matters at this stage. I really just want to focus on what my hands are doing, falling in love with this fibre again, and remembering what it is about this craft that I so enjoy. have a bit of a different sewing project to share with you today, and it's related to my big hike that's coming up for my birthday this month. If you haven't heard me bang on about it yet, my friend Katrina and I are going to hike 100 miles for my special significant birthday this month, and so a lot of my creative time has been taken up with thinking about practicalities. What am I going to wear? What do I need to take with me? In my last episode I showed you customizing my hiking poles, which was really fun, and today I need to work on my waterproof trousers, or rain pants as I'm reliably told that Americans call them. Here they are. They're going to rustle, so apologies for that. I have had these for 10 years, since my last 100-mile hike, and they are brilliant. They weigh next to nothing. They're still totally waterproof, but this elastic waistband is horrible. It's I don't enjoy the sensation of anything touching my waist these days. I tend to not make or wear any clothes that attach to my waist at all. That's why I'm always in dungarees or dresses. My comfort requires nothing to fit around my waist, but worst of all is an elasticated waistband, and actually this is now a little bit too tight. My body has changed over the last 10 years, and they don't quite fit around the waist. The rest of the trousers still fit fine. They fit fine over my bum and my hips. So what I've decided to do is take the waistband out and make a pair of braces for them. But for practical reasons, those braces need to be able to be detachable at the waist so that I can pull the trousers down and go to the loo without taking off my rucksack and my jacket. So I've been thinking about the logistics of how to construct something like that, and I ordered supplies. I ordered supplies for two options because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to go with it. The first one is some narrow webbing. I think it's 1 inch or 25 millimeters, and that would go with these black plastic buckles. So there would be these ones at the front, and then this one at the back, which has two attachments. So the bottom of it would sit on the waistband, and then it would split into two, so the braces would go up and over my shoulders and down at the front. So that's one option. The other option is this slightly wider webbing. I think this is 40 millimeter, which has a really cute design on it. I like the colour. It's much more hard wearing, and I think because it's wider it will feel more comfortable on my shoulders. The disadvantage of this one is it's going to be much more difficult to sew, and the attachments for it are these, which are significantly heavy. I would say, I don't know, they probably weigh about 50 grams, but if you think about, I would need 4 of them, 2 at the front and 2 at the back. That would be adding another 200 grams to my rucksack, and at this stage I'm counting every single gram. I don't want to be carrying anything unnecessary. So I'm a little bit concerned about the weight of these. Also, they don't have a clip, they just have this hook mechanism, so they might come undone. The advantage of them over these plastic ones is the depth. So obviously these would sit more flat and be more comfortable with my rucksack on top of them. This is probably going to feel quite bulky under a rucksack, so I don't know, I can't decide. I think probably the ultimate decision will be which one of these webbings my sewing machine complains about the least, because my sewing machine is not very heavy duty, and so whatever I choose, this is going to be a sewing challenge for it. But I don't know, I think my instinct says to go with this option because it's lighter weight and easier to construct, and realistically, well, I'm tempting fate here. I was going to say I'm not going to be wearing the waterproof trousers for my whole walk. I really hope I'm not going to be needing to wear waterproof trousers for a whole 100 miles. That would be very miserable weather indeed. So maybe I can tolerate the temporary discomfort of a bulky clip under my rucksack. I don't know, maybe I will make up this option because that's the most straightforward. Try it on, see how it goes, and if I don't like it, then I will make this one. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Green Bean. I hope you've enjoyed spending some time hanging out with me and Jack, although he hasn't been around much today. It's a bit too hot for doggy cuddles today. I've loved having the chance to share my projects and chat with you, so thank you for being here. Thank you again if you're one of the lovely folks who supports us over on Patreon, and thanks for watching. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.